General of the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Indonesia, Your Excellency Dr. Majuddin Swananber van Rosmalen. Am I right in my pronunciation? Thank you for your inspiring speech, and I think it will be so valuable for the conference. I would like to begin my speech, my short speech, with it is called the general recognition that up to this very day, experts commonly of the opinion that the conception of human rights cannot be separated from Western traditional thoughts or doctrines on individual rights. To some extent, I think it is the right statement. But let me say, there are also many results of research that said that if we understand human rights merely as a Western conception, to some extent, it could be misleading, because it has been widely acknowledged that long before human rights were laid down in legal instruments, whether international instrument or national instrument, I mean the constitution of a particular state, the principles of human rights and values such as propriety, justice, and caring were vividly rooted in numerous cultural practices or oral traditions of people around the globe, including the Eastern people, of course. And also, this respect for human dignity and personality and the belief in justice are also the paramount goals in doctrines and traditions of great religions such as Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, as well as Confucianism and Taoism. So, it would hardly be a mistake to say that values and principles of human rights in general and economic, social, and cultural rights in particular are of universal character. So, let me continue what happened to our country in Indonesia. Since the very beginning of the country, the values of human rights, especially economic, social, and cultural rights, is already attributed to the Constitution of the Republic of Indonesia, especially in the preamble of the Constitution. We call the Constitution of 1945. You know, the preamble of as to the economic, social, and cultural rights, it is part of what is called our nation, our goal as a nation. It is part of the 5 basic principles of Pancasila, the 5 basic principles of our life as a nation. It's called Pancasila. It is social justice for all the people of Indonesia. So, and then during the student movement, which is called the Reform Movement in Indonesia, which resulted in the amendment of the Constitution, we included human rights in our Constitution. It is in Chapter 10 and Chapter 10A of our Constitution. And pertaining to economic, social, and cultural rights, let me tell you some examples of them. Right to form a family and the right of every child to be entitled to viability, to grow up, and to be developed, as well as rights to protection from violence and discrimination. It is Article 28b of our Constitution. Rights to be entitled to self-development through the fulfillment of basic needs, to acquire education, and to obtain benefits of science and technology, art and culture, for the sake of enhancing quality of life and of the welfare of mankind. Article 28c, paragraph 1 of our Constitution. Right to be physically and spiritually prosperous, to have a place to reside, and to acquire a good and healthy living environment, and to obtain health care. Article 28h, paragraph 1. That's only a few examples. And most importantly, our Constitution also emphasizes the constitutional obligations of one state to ensure the fulfillment of citizen constitutional rights related to economic, social, and cultural rights. These include, for example, every citizen shall follow basic education and the government shall be under obligation to finance it. Article 31, paragraph 2 of the Constitution. The state shall prioritize education budget by allocating at least 20% of the state budget and of regional budget for education sector. The state shall control sectors of productions which are important for the state and which are vital for the livelihood of the people. Article 33, paragraph 2 of the Constitution. And the state shall control land, water, and natural resources contained therein, and they shall be utilized for the optimum welfare of the people. Article 33, paragraph 3 of our Constitution. The state shall develop a social security system for all people and shall empower those who are poor in accordance with human dignity. That is what written in our Constitution. So the question is, what is in reality? That's why we buy the Constitutional Court. Because, as Thomas Paine famously said, a constitution is not a thing in name only, but in fact, it is not an ideal, but a real existence. And whenever it cannot be produced in a visible form, there is none. So, a constitution can only be regarded as fundamental law if, among others, this is, I concluded from the famous decision, the famous ruling of John Marshall in Marbury versus Madison, a constitution can only be considered fundamental if there is an authority to say that any law which is in contradiction with the Constitution is unconstitutional, and consequently the law loses its legally binding power. That's what we practice here in Indonesia after the amendment of the Constitution. And pertaining to economic, social, and cultural rights, we have many decisions about it. I think for further readings, I already submitted my paper that can be distributed to all the participants of the conference, containing the experience of Indonesia in upholding the Constitution, especially in safeguarding the economic, social, and cultural rights. Yeah. Let me say, for example, there are many decisions since the very beginning of the Constitutional Court in 2003. We already faced with problems on upholding the rights concerning economic, social, and cultural rights. the first decision that shocked the nation, maybe decision number 002 or 22 or 22 in 2003, this is judicial review of law number 20 of 2002 on electricity. Because the concept of unbundling contained in the law, which the court of the opinion that such conception would prevent the state, not to say the state intervention to electricity was in contradiction with the principle contained in Article 33, paragraph 2 of the Constitution. So, the court declared the entire law unconstitutional. This is the first decision maybe that shocked the nation for the first time since the establishment of the Constitutional Court. Let me say something that may be important to discuss in the conference tomorrow. That now, every citizen of Indonesia who deem his or her constitutional right infringed by a single law can directly submit petition to the Constitutional Court and ask the court to declare the law unconstitutional. Maybe, I don't know, to some extent, maybe it's also happened in Germany. Yeah, that a single citizen can challenge a law that passed by lawmakers that democratically elected, in case of Indonesia, by the House of Representatives, that directly elected by the people, with the president, who is also directly elected by the people, can be challenged in front of the court if a single citizen of Indonesia feel that his or her constitutional right has been violated by the enactment of the law. And we granted many of the petitions, including petition concerning the economic, social, and cultural rights. Even not only the substance of the law that can be challenged before the Constitutional Court, but also the constitutional process of the deliberation of the law as well. It is called formal judicial review in our practice in the Constitutional Court. Nevertheless, not a single formal judicial review had been granted by the court since the establishment of the court in 2003. But at least, constitutionally speaking, it could be happening in the future. Who knows? Yeah. Well, let me continue with the most important question. Why Indonesia should buy its constitutional system in such a way so as to make every single citizen have standing to file a petition before the Constitutional Court to challenge the constitutionality of the court. There is no other reason, because we want to advance. We want to be a real constitutional democratic state. And we already know well that one of the conditions to be a constitutional democratic state shall be the guarantee of human rights. And we also know once the human rights absorb into the constitutions, they will transform into the constitutional rights. They will become part of the Constitution. As a Constitution is a fundamental law, so all the branches, the state branches, should be obey the Constitution, including the constitutional rights of every citizens. So that's why the role of the Constitutional Court called the Constitutional Court called the guardian of the Constitution. Now we can see year after year the petition concerning the judicial review, we call it judicial review in Indonesia, or the constitutional review of every law in Indonesia, tend to be rising. I don't know, up to this very day, maybe it is already more than 262 maybe. The petition for constitutional review of a law that had been granted by the court. Maybe the last decision of the court that I think it's already applauded by women activists in Indonesia and protection, especially who concentrate on protection for the right of the child. It is the petition concerning law on marriage. The court declared that the provision of the law on marriage that allow a girl within the age of 16 to get married unconstitutional, because such a provision would absolutely prevent the girl from enjoying her constitutional rights as to education, healthcare, and prone to violence. And now the latest development in Indonesia is there has been a discussion for amending the law on marriage within the House of Representatives of the lawmakers in Indonesia. So, as the last words of my speech, I would like to emphasize that the establishment of the Constitutional Court can be seen as a serious part of a serious effort of Indonesia to achieve its goal as a constitutional democratic state, at least in advancing the protection of human rights, which is included the economic, social, and